Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Sudarshan Vig, who is the co-founder of MerlinWand, which is a platform that personalizes storybooks for children. Hi Sudarshan, welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya. Very nice to be part of ELI, and I'm really thankful for you to, call me as part of Entrepreneur Lounge of India. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
I'd request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. Uh, Hi, everyone. So I'm Sudarshan. I am a first-time entrepreneur, as of now. But one of the things that I have always been is that I have been working for around 18 odd years in IT, and around 85% of it has been in startups.
Okay.
So for me, the startup world still I have been very close to, and those are the learnings I'm actually taking while I'm trying to, lead MerlinWand towards growth. And apart from that, I'm again in Hyderabad. So we are based out of Hyderabad. So in Hyderabad, again, I am pretty much known as an art evangelizer. So I have a lot to do with all the art specific events, whether they are theater or fine arts or music or dance. I am usually a very good connoisseur of all of those. So those are some of the things where I try as much as possible that, that is something I can, tell people about it. I myself enjoy those a lot. And think, that is something which is necessary for a growth of a person. So pretty much in a nutshell, that's about me.
Okay. Would love to discuss more about MerlinWand. To start with, can you tell us what is the meaning of the word MerlinWand?
Okay, sure. So basically, Merlin used to be this wizard. And this wizard was actually, it came into popularity in the 10th and 11th century when he was supposed to be part of King Arthur's, knights. So that's where Merlin was there. But earlier, there are references of Merlin the wizard from 6th century onwards
Mm.
with a slightly different spelling. It's a Welsh wizard. The main thing is that Merlin is kind of the precursor to all the wizard characters that we know in popular literature, whether it is Lord of the Rings, whether it is Harry Potter. You take the primary main wizards, you take, say, Dumbledore, for example,
Mm.
or in the case of, say, Lord of the Rings, you have Sauron and Gandalf, say, for example. So the
Right.
Merlin was very interesting because he had a very positive connotation for some people and negative connotation for a lot of people. And
Okay.
it is these two sides of Merlin. And another thing is because what we are trying to do, we are trying to create some kind of a magic where we are personalizing every storybook for an individual kid. We thought, it makes really good sense to have a fantasy element to the name of the company itself. And that's how Merlin Wand came into the picture.
Okay. Now tell us how do you do it? How do you personalize the storybooks for the kids?
Right. So essentially, what we do is we have multiple stories which are written by authors, most of them Indian authors, and which have been illustrated by again Indian illustrators only.
Okay.
And all of these books, the main thought process of how it started. Let me. Is it okay if I go for start from
Yeah,
there?
absolutely.
All right. So basically, the point was that we figured out that in the past 5 or 6 years, we actually try and give the pandemic. We try to give an excuse, but even long before the pandemic, kids were actually hooked onto devices, a lot of devices,
True.
right? So you would agree, right?
Abs-
So and I have a kid. My co-founders also happen to have kids, so we are all parents. So one of the things that we realized we saw over time and we researched was the amount of imagination and creativity actually becomes bounded if you're consuming only video, say, for example,
Mhm.
right? Or if you're consuming with the devices, there are so many other issues which happen.
True.
Right. So one of the things how you can make your imagination grow, or your creativity cultivate, is by reading books. And I'll give you an example. So for example, if you see Harry Potter as a
Mhm.
movie, you'll realize this is how, say, Harry Potter looks like. This is what Hogwarts looks like. This is what everything looks like. But when you're reading it, your picture would be different from my picture. It is an amalgamation of how, my upbringing was, in what kind of situation I've been living. So my imagination will be very different from your imagination. I'll imagine Harry Potter in my head very differently from how you would imagine,
Right.
right? So those are the kind of things which gets you interested in reading books. It's very personal experience,
Mhm.
and that later on becomes your basis for innovation, because unless you have imagination, you can't innovate, you can't have really uh, good solutions to existing problems,
Right.
right? So we thought the most foundational thing is, how do we get back children into reading? And when that problem came into the picture, we thought, what is the best way? Why can't you be Harry Potter? Priyaranjan is the main character. Priyaranjan's friend Rajesh is Ron. And again, there is maybe some girl that Hema, she's Hermione.
Okay.
And when you have a book where you have these three characters, Priyaranjan, Hema, and Rajesh, people whom you'll be much more interested in reading, because your attention span is hooked by the characters that the people that
Right.
right? And that's where we thought, for every book, every story that we have, we'll personalize it not only to the main character, the kid whom we are, possibly personalizing it for, but we can even include their friends in it. And not only that, what we thought is, as long as we are creating the technology to personalize, again, we are not tech phobic people, we are all techies, right? So we are leveraging technology only for personalization. But when we thought that we can leverage technology for personalization, we started. I have been a gamer long before. So one of the things I used to see was, there is this concept in role playing games, in RPGs, where you can take a decision, and based on the decision, the game changes. So we thought, why can't I do that in a storyline? So in the storyline, I'll give you certain decision points. So each storybook actually has multiple storylines, and you can choose your own storyline when personalizing. So eventually, the book that you build will be a unique book in the whole world. So every book we print, by the way, our product is not the platform, our product is the book. So
Okay.
I'll just show you. For example, this is our product.
Mhm.
Okay, it's the book. So every book that we publish ends up being unique. No two books will be the same, right? Our business model is such that in the platform, you can actually read the story for free. I want you to read,
Mhm.
but you will only pay when you buy it in a book format, because that is how you're supposed to read. And
Absolutely.
that is a good keepsake, that you have a book, you read it with your friends, you are part of the story, you have chosen your own storyline within each story. And in the end, that book will remain with you forever. And believe me, what has happened is, this is something where I think kids, even though they've grown out, grown beyond reading these books, this is something that they'll keep for a
Mhm.
long time to come. So
Wow.
that was how it came about.
I think this is a very interesting idea. And if I were a kid, I would love to go through your platform. But speaking of
Even
technology,
elders, even older people will love these books. You can buy these books
sure, sure.
still.
Speaking of technology, is there a
Yeah,
tech stack behind the whole thing? If yes, then can you tell us a little bit about what are the different modules that come together to make it play?
correct. So essentially, the tech stack which comes into play, 30% of it is 15 to 30% of it is the critical tech part we had to build on our own.
Mhm.
Okay. See, the rest of it, eventually we are building it on a website. That website, eventually we ended up using Shopify, because Shopify happens to be a very popular for e-commerce products. So we are using Shopify, but the personalization itself is a coding that we did on our own. right? So in this personalization, we eventual tech stack, if you see, it is again Java based code. The front end is React based, and also Shopify uses something called Liquid,
Mhm.
not too different from React. So these were the tech stack we completely used, and then there are some libraries which we used, which were very beneficial in um, manipulating Photoshop files.
Okay.
Why? Because all of these books, if you see, whatever we are showing, are actually built over. How do you make sure that you can personalize it to such a great extent?
Mm.
It's because Photoshop has multiple layers. You can actually even personalize your avatar. So I'll give you three avatars. You choose which avatar should come. We
Mhm.
show the preview of your book within 10 seconds of you choosing all the parameters.
Wow,
So
wonderful.
within 10 seconds, we'll show you the entire personalized book, right? And for that, of course, we made sure that we had some good scaling mechanism. We used some good AWS resources to make sure that it is scalable, right? And we use certain libraries which could manipulate the Photoshop files very fast. And all of these are pre-designed templates. So we had taken around 4 to 5 months to build all of these for the initial books. First three books that we had built, when we took 4 to 5 months to build this, so that we could finally code, so that literally within 10 seconds you will see personalization based on the name, the avatar, the gender, and the storyline. All these four put together, you'll see a preview in as real time as possible. 10 seconds is as real time as you can get.
Can you tell us how it all started? I mean, when did you think of become building this venture and becoming an entrepreneur? And uh, is there a trigger point that triggered you to get started on this?
That's the trigger is actually, there is no very sharp trigger. It is actually very organic. So what happened is, now I'll bring my friends into the picture. So uh, I have a friend called Neeraj Agarwal.
Mhm.
So he is the techiest nerd I know personally.
Okay.
Okay, so he has been an architect in Google research. He was there in Uber. Then he was there. He was the first employee of Walmart Lab. So he's the techiest nerd I know, and I know him from close to 15 years.
Mhm.
Uh, then there is a design expert. He's a design leader here in Hyderabad, Rama Rao. He I know since the last 7 to 8 years, and we three have been discussing ideas for the last 5 years at least.
Okay.
Every month, every 2 months, we get together. We say, "See, this is a new product which has come. Amazing product. See, see what a good idea it is. What good problem it is solving." Then we came out. Then there were many products for which we actually researched, and we thought, is it viable for for us to solve that kind of a problem? And then we saw that there were other companies who started building it,
Mhm.
right? So this organic growth was always there. We always wanted to, build something which is of course the need of the hour. But why this particular product? This particular product was because it had a personal connection. It had a personal passion for us. All of three of us, as I mentioned earlier, are parents. And one of the things which hit us was that, of course, we want to have a viable business. We want to have a business which really is profitable. But we also want to make sure that it is something which is hopefully changing how the future generation grows up, right? Why? Because the kind of stories I'm bringing in, it should be something that should help them in some way, which probably most textbooks probably won't. So if you even look at the subjects of our storybooks, we have a storybook on climate change called The Climate Ninja,
Mhm.
right? Now, climate change is a fairly depressing topic to discuss. The world is going to end because the climate is changing. But how do you make it fun for a kid, right? I've given up on grown-ups, very
Okay.
frankly speaking. For me, it is the kids who will actually do something really worthwhile, to, in the future, to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
So climate ninja is just a foundation for me. It's that, how do I make it, somewhat friendly? I'm talking about an alien whose planet is destroyed, who is talking to the hero and telling him, see, this is what I had done and my planet got destroyed. You just make sure that you don't. So this guy says, okay, what are the things I can do to make sure, I don't end up like this alien's planet? Very simply put, right? But these are kind of subtle learnings. We don't say that, this is what we are telling as part of the story. The moral should come automatically. It should come in a subconscious manner, then only. And how does it come in a subconscious manner? If it is in the form of a story. If it is in a form of a textbook, usually it is done for marks.
True.
It is not done for knowledge. So for us, it is like, no, this knowledge should pass on in a subconscious manner. Many times you may take subconscious lessons which we were not even giving as part of the story.
Absolutely.
That is also possible, because I heard this in one very interesting. So we have one book called The Great Timbuktu Rescue, where it is about kids befriending an animal and saving the village from a natural disaster. And you have different animals, you can choose one of those animals. Our whole point was, it should kids should, uh, be friendly to animals, for example. That was our initial thought process.
Mm-hmm.
But we came back, some parents told that their kids were telling them that these animals represent outcasts in a society.
Okay.
I told, whoa, I never thought of that. That was not my intent. But if that is something they're getting, it's such a powerful lesson they're getting. So they're trying to save that outcast from, say, their friend bullies. They are trying to, think that they were fearing an outcast. Eventually, they realized that that animal is friendly.
Hmm.
I never thought of that lesson, but they came up with it themselves. So kids are very, very sharp, very intelligent, much more than we give them credit for. Right. So this, in a small way, is why I thought, that is why we thought we should start this, because this is something which was very close to our heart, that it is not only as a viable business, but also something which has some true social importance.
Okay. Speaking of kids, one thing that is coming to my mind is again coming to the platform, they'll realize that it's all magical and very wonderful platform. But how do they come to the platform? Can you tell us how did you onboard the initial set of kids to your platform?
Right. So in our case, the kids are mostly not the ones who are actually buying the books. Mostly it is the parents
Hmm.
or the relatives, because eventually it is a, rather than a platform today. I have vision of a platform later, but today it is an e-commerce website. To be, very blunt,
Mm-hmm.
it's an e-commerce website which personalizes also. Okay. So for us, the whole point was, how do I make sure I get the message across to the parents or people who have kids around them, that this is something which can probably, get them into a reading habit, and why reading habit is important. And what is personalization? Because in India, it is, for me, the challenge, even today, the biggest challenge is to explain what does it mean when I say personalization of storybooks. That is for me the biggest challenge, which I'm trying to get across as we go along. So onboarding for me was simple. I once I had a fairly good launch event with some good names. So I had Ratna Pathak as part of the show. I had Cyrus Brocha as part of the show. Kunal Vijayakar, and all of them endorsed this. So that got some visibility. Apart from that, of course, I took the social channels. I got some really good media attention as well. So there were some, there were some news channels which talked to us. There were media reports which were doing. So we are very slowly but surely reaching there. I'm not saying that we have done a very a blitzkrieg job and blowing up the entire children's publishing industry. No, we are still going very slowly, because I think for us the challenge is explaining what personalization of storybooks means, because each book is unique, and personalization is a fairly difficult thing to do, which is why the cost of the book can be higher than what you would have a generally, inventory based storybook that you would have. But then the effect of that is the kid will probably definitely read the book in a single sitting 80% of the times, and they'll keep the book for a long time.
True. What are
Right?
the
So onboarding was
what are the different challenges that you have faced along the way while building and growing this venture?
while okay before launching the product, I think tech was of course a bit of a challenge, but if you were to ask me the biggest challenge, it was to find really good illustrators who would collaborate with us and do a good job. Illustrators, really good illustrators, are tough to find, and unfortunately in India, the publishing scene is such that they pay peanuts to really good illustrators. So most of the good illustrators only illustrate for foreign publications,
Mhm.
right? So in our case, we thought, no, we are not going to uh, pay as little. For us, we know that it takes a lot of time to do these illustrations, and more importantly, this tech is based on a lot of illustration manipulations, which for the illustration was also new. For every picture page, they had to create 6 versions or 7 versions of it, because there are that many possibilities of the avatar coming into the picture,
Mhm.
right? So I'll show you as an example. If I were to
Sure.
show you a book, um, so for example, this is the Great Timbuktu Rescue. You can see, right?
Mm.
So this is, say, one avatar.
Okay.
Okay, this is one of the heroes. They have to make the permutation and combination of the same avatar for a different looking character as they go along. So it will be this.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Okay. So for every avatar, they have to actually create the whole scenario. Then it's another thing which was new for them. It is not one story, even though the storybook, it is considered one. The
Mhm.
permutation combinations are many. You have, multiple storylines.
Right.
That was very new for them. Very importantly, the number of permutation combinations sometimes gets really large. For example, we have a storybook called The Music Band.
Okay.
We're three friends. You can personalize three friends. And who does what in the music band? So, who is the singer? Who is the guitarist? Who is the drummer? So, just for one page, they needed to create 6 characters into 3 instruments. That is 18 total permutations and combinations
Hmm.
for one page.
Okay.
So a tremendous amount of work from their side also. And for me, it was very important to find somebody who is actually in the right spirit going to contribute. Finally, all the illustrators I found have done a much better job than what even I anticipated in my head. So you would have seen some of these illustrations, right?
Yeah.
Top-notch international quality. And my happiest thing is all the illustrators are incidentally ended up being women. I never went out to actually hire women, but in this case, all of them happen to be women. They've done an amazing, amazing job. We are so close to Women's Day. I thought I should bring that out.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, Moving on, as a part of the discussion, we'd also like to cover the personal side of being an entrepreneur. And to start with, my first question is, what drives you to become an entrepreneur, or why, if I may ask, why did you leave your corporate career behind and start on your own?
This is actually a one-line answer for me, if I have to say. One is the tagline of MerlinWand is "Be your own hero."
Okay.
That kind of explains to same thing applies to me. I wanted to say, "Be my own hero, be my own boss." Right.
Okay.
Second thing is, when this is the kind of a company, and it had to be something which I'm personally passionate about. I think that is the case with all entrepreneurs, very frankly speaking.
Hmm.
They always try to solve problems that they personally are passionate about or they go through. For me, this was a personal problem which I wanted to solve. How successful it will get, I hope it really gets successful and it grows. but for me it is anyway a personal satisfaction that I launched it and it is still growing. So for me, that is itself an achievement, because personally I've come from a when we have started out, I had a very lower middle class background. When you talk about dreams as a kid, my dream used to be I should have a Vespa scooter.
Okay.
So if you see today, I happen to have a car and my own home. That was way beyond the dreams as a kid I could have, because at that time I couldn't even dream that way.
Okay.
So for me, it was like, okay, today I have probably achieved things which I could not even dream as I was a kid.
Hmm.
So I'm not the kind who would want to say invest in and make tons of money off, say, things like real estate or houses or whatnot. For me, it was like, I've achieved more than what I had ever dreamt. How can I make things interesting for myself? Because I found that this is something where I am the most intense, where I'm the most passionate, is when I'm doing something on my own.
Hmm.
When I'm, talking to people, when I'm talking to you, for example. So these conversations are actually what prop me up, right? And that is how, I believe that, I have gained way more than I had earlier expected. I want to just try and see something that will help the future generation. And this is my small little way of doing that.
Okay. The way you narrate it looks like a very beautiful journey, which it is, but
Thank
it
you.
comes with a lot of challenges. As an entrepreneur,
Yes,
first of all, you have to stay energetic and consistent all the time. And when you lose your focus, the business also suffers. Can you tell us
right.
how do you manage to, you know, um, help yourself out from depressions or downs, which is a part of the game always?
I actually don't do anything, because after 2 days, some good news comes and that lifts me up. So for me, it is like just going through those moments. And I try to analyze, is there something I can do to solve it? If I cannot do anything to solve it, very simple funda. I read a lot of fiction. Okay,
Okay.
and in that also I end up reading a lot of comedy fiction. P.G. Wodehouse, for example, or Jerome K. Jerome, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is one of my favorites. So I read a lot, and whenever something is happening in a way where I know I cannot even solve it, I can't even try to solve it, it's probably a bad day. Pick up one book, continue reading. That is my simple way. A lot of people, my wife, for example, she meditates,
Okay.
right? There is somebody else who does something else. For me, it is pick up a good comedy book. It helps me, remove everything from the mind, because I think why people even meditate is, how do you make sure that all the negative thoughts which are coinciding or which are around those depression, how can you make your mind blank? So for me, it is this: read this book. I know I'll be so engrossed in it, it just goes away. Within 2 days, some good news comes. It always comes. And then within 2 days, bad news also comes. It is always going to come. We are so used to it by now that we know after 2, 3 days, something good will happen. So,
Okay. Uh, how do you manage your time? Would be very interested to know how your calendar looks like for a typical
uh,
day.
I don't have any typical days. Every day is very different. So, more often than not, my planned meetings or planned schedules, right, will be for the entire week, probably not more than 7 to 8 hours.
Okay.
Okay. But and this is because it's in the start. You have to remember that, as you change phases, all of this differs.
Hmm.
80% of my work happens to be ad hoc. Today morning, I realize I get time, I sit and do finance, the thing which I hate, but I have to do,
Hmm.
right? Then someday I take time, okay, I have to manipulate PSD files. There are a lot of things. As an entrepreneur, you have to be hands-on while doing it, because it's the start. You can't afford to hire a huge team.
Hmm.
We have a very good team, a very small team, but a very good team who helps out. But there are a lot of things which I do hands-on, and that depends on what next is coming, right? It is not very long. So this phase is something that we call as drunken walk. I don't know, you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs already. I don't know whether we've heard this term.
Never heard.
So this term is called, this phase is called drunken walk.
Okay.
What this means is, this is that phase where a startup knows that you have to go in a particular direction,
Hmm.
but to reach that direction is not a straight line. It is going this way, that way, this way, that way, this way, that way, and you're coming
Correct.
back to the same. So that phase is actually, it's a term used in the startup world called drunken walk. So we are in that phase. There are a
Okay.
lot of things that we try, but aim is to still go forward,
Hmm.
right? So that consistency and the strategy of this is the way to go forward will not be very defined as of now. That definition will come, I'm hoping, within 6 months down the line or end of this year, is where there will be a lot more definition. Right now, there are just a lot of things that we are doing. And that's why my calendar, it's very difficult to say suddenly I might get a call tomorrow, I have to meet somebody because some printing thing is there or something. I just go. That's
What
what
would
it
you
is.
what would you say is the meaning of entrepreneurship for you? How would you define the term entrepreneur?
Very interesting. First of all, entrepreneur, I think, is a very generic term, right? The entrepreneur, as a generic term, I mean that's somebody who has not only the guts, of course, you require guts, but tons of people have guts,
Hmm.
but also the patience. And the guts and patience are actually they work opposite to each other.
True.
Because a lot of guts has a lot to do with impatience and trying to do at that spur of the moment. And
Hmm.
patience is very, very long term. So entrepreneurship for me is if you have the guts and the patience to see through a particular idea and make sure that it is something that a lot of other people also agree on, and they um, buy that product or service, right? I
Hmm.
would say you're an entrepreneur. Whether, see, like I told you, like a person who is, for me, like one of the most important entrepreneurs are the ones who, on a signal, are the ones, and I think this is the most cliched example, but I still want to bring it out, who, on a traffic signal, sell those knickknacks. One month they sell pens, the other month they sell heart shaped balloons, the third month they sell something else. Why? Because you also, in the same signal, you find beggars.
Hmm.
But those set of people chose not to be beggars. They chose, no, let me make something for myself. So for me, they are also, true spirited entrepreneurs, right? And me personally, as I told, entrepreneur is a much more generic term. I personally feel there are a couple of terms. So I had given a talk in one college here in Hyderabad, where I talked about a term called litpreneurship.
Hmm.
Okay. So litpreneurship was entrepreneurship using literature as a base.
Okay.
Right. So that was right. That's a really good term for me. It's like, yeah, litpreneur makes sense. Or artpreneur makes sense. So I told, we can possibly say, okay, somebody is an artpreneur, somebody is a litpreneur. So these are some interesting terms to make avenues within entrepreneurship, because not every entrepreneurship needs to be a software, crypto, web3, metaverse thing.
Right.
You have to bring people back to reality also,
Absolutely.
right?
My final question for you. Tell us about the different lessons that you have learned as an entrepreneur. Probably some of the lessons we learned the hard way, uh, which we can learn from you and take away, apply to our ventures. And more importantly, we don't have to go through the same hard learning process that you have gone through.
I think this is again a relatively tough thing to say, because a lot of the learning, thankfully, comes from experience. So I'll tell you in this way. Now, thought about, we first discussed this problem in March 2021.
Hmm.
We launched in September 2022. Entire product, finding authors, finding illustrators, getting them to write, getting them to illustrate, doing the tech stack, arranging the launch event, everything within 6 months. Right? Why? How? Because over the years, all three of us had been part of startups where we ourselves did a lot of learning of what not to do, or if we do something, how to do. Now, if you're say a 25-year-old,
Mhm.
you can definitely replicate MerlinWand. Definitely. It's not something, a moonshot or something that you cannot do. Everybody can replicate a MerlinWand. But if you were to think of it, you'd probably take a year and a half to come up with it.
Mm.
So for me, that extra 15 years experience is where I realized how best to manage my time and what problem to concentrate upon so that I could launch the product in 6 months. And why is it necessary to launch the product in 6 months? Because it is important for me to keep the costs low and to get a product into the market fast. And for a product of this sort, if I have to go to venture funds, if I have to go to investors, I better show the working product. It's not a tech seed round where I can say, see, this is my idea. If you give me money, I'll build it in 1 year. No, I'll build it. I started selling it. Now, see, I've started selling it. It is working. Can you now fund me? Right? So for me, this made the best sense. There were certain things that we very consciously decided. We'll keep the cost low. There are multiple ways how we made sure we'll keep the cost low. We don't have an office. Everyone works from home. Thankfully, COVID made it acceptable not to have an office,
Mm.
right? So then we outsourced the printing, but we bought a binding machine because binding machine, if we outsource the binding, it was unreliable.
Yeah.
So all of these small things we decided so that we know we could keep the cost low, we could launch as quickly as possible. The important thing is MVP launch. If you can launch quickly, half the battle is won because you're showing to the world that you have succeeded at least part of the dream that you had, part of the problem state that you were mentioning. People don't have to look at a mock-up or a presentation to believe you have it working. So that I would say that is probably the best lesson I would give. If you have a working MVP in the market, nothing beats that. And biggest learning, always be good to your spouse. And because right now, all of this spending, how am I able to do it? How am I able to spend so much time and I'm putting money into this venture? It would not have been possible if my wife is not supporting. She is working,
Okay.
right? So she is the constant support for me. She is the breadwinner of the family, if you ask me.
Mhm.
Right now, I am not the breadwinner yet.
Okay.
I left my last job a year and a half back, right? So I'm not the breadwinner of the family yet in the year and a half. So you have to make sure that the relationships around you are really good. Then there will always be support for you to even try these things or you even go out, because guts is very easy to say, but you won't have enough guts if your support system is not
True.
there, right? So that's all I can say.
Well, I think on this note, we have come to the eventual end of the session. Thanks for your time, Sudarshan, and our best wishes for MerlinWand, which I think is one of the beautiful ventures that I have seen.
Thank you. Thanks, Priyaranjan, and it was so nice talking to you. And please continue, having these discussions, because I heard some of your past podcasts and got a lot of learning myself. It's a great job that you're doing.
Thank you.